I've seen more people struggle with lemon trees than just about any other fruit tree, and it drives me crazy because lemons are not difficult. They're one of the most generous, forgiving trees you can plant, but you would not know it by looking at most people's yards. They have got this lemon tree sitting there, been in the ground 3, 4, 5 years, full of green leaves, looks perfectly healthy, and it gives them maybe a dozen lemons a year. Maybe. And they just accept that. They think that is what a lemon tree does. I am here to tell you that is not what a lemon tree does. I have got trees on my property that produce hundreds of lemons every single season. Hundreds. And the difference between my trees and the ones sitting in somebody's yard doing nothing is not the variety, it is not the climate, it is not luck. It comes down to 5 things that most people either skip entirely or get just wrong enough to hold that tree back from doing what it was born to do. I have been growing citrus my whole life. My grandfather had lemon trees that were still bearing heavy when they were 40 years old, and he kept them that way with the same methods I'm going to share with you right now. Step by step, no fluff, no gimmicks. And stick around for the bonus tip at the end because it is something my grandfather figured out about when to water that makes the difference between a tree that drops its fruit and one that holds every single lemon to maturity. That one tip alone is worth more than anything else I'm going to tell you today. Here's the thing about a lemon tree. It is not a one-season crop. This is a decades-long investment. A well-cared-for lemon tree will feed your family for 20, 30, 40 years or more. But a neglected tree, even one that looks healthy on the surface, will just sit there year after year producing almost nothing, and most folks have no idea what they are doing wrong. Get these 5 things right, and your tree will reward you every single season. Get them wrong, and you are just growing an ornamental. I'm going to walk you through this the way I would teach it to someone standing right next to me in the yard. We will cover where to plant it, how to mulch and feed it, when to water, how to handle pests without poisoning your food, and a couple of extra steps most people never think about. I will finish up with the problems you're most likely to run into and how to fix them. Full sun. 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight minimum. That is non-negotiable for a lemon tree that bears heavy. Now here's why that matters. A lemon tree produces an enormous amount of fruit, and fruit takes energy. Where does that energy come from? Sunlight. Every hour of direct sun your tree gets is fuel for fruit production. Put a lemon tree in a spot that only gets 3 or 4 hours of sun, and it will survive, it will grow leaves, it might even flower a little, but it will never produce the way it should. I've seen people plant a lemon tree on the north side of their house behind a tall fence and then wonder why they get 8 lemons a year. That tree is starving for light. If you're in a cooler climate, zones 8 or 9, plant your tree against a south-facing wall. That wall absorbs heat during the day and radiates it back at night, and that extra warmth can be the difference between a tree that struggles through winter and one that comes out strong in spring, ready to set fruit. If your tree is already in the ground in a less than ideal spot, you cannot move a mature tree easily, but you can look at what is shading it. A branch from a nearby tree, an overgrown shrub, a fence extension. Sometimes removing one source of shade opens up 2 or 3 extra hours of sun, and that alone changes everything. That brings us to what goes on the ground around that tree. And this is one of the biggest differences between a tree that just survives and a tree that thrives. Thick mulch from the trunk to the drip line. I'm talking 6 to 12 inches deep. Here's the thing about that. Lemon trees have a fibrous, shallow root system that spreads out wide just below the surface of the soil. Those roots are your tree's lifeline for moisture and nutrients, and they are sitting right where the sun bakes the ground hardest. A thick layer of mulch protects those roots from heat in summer and cold in winter, holds moisture in the soil so you water less, and breaks down over time into organic matter that feeds the tree for free. I pile it on heavy. Leaves, straw, wood chips, whatever I have on hand. My grandfather used to say, you cannot overmulch a lemon tree. Just keep it a foot away from the trunk so it does not rot the bark. He was right. Pull the mulch back about 12 inches from the base of the trunk and then pile it thick all the way out to where the canopy ends. That outer edge is called the drip line, and it is where the majority of those feeder roots are doing their work. Mulch that entire area, and your tree will have a cooler, moister, more nutrient-rich root zone than bare soil could ever provide. Mulch sorted. Now let us feed this tree properly, because this is where I see people make one of two mistakes. Either they do not fertilize at all, or they go overboard and the tree puts out nothing but leaves. A citrus-specific fertilizer with trace elements, applied 2 to 3 times a year. That is the formula. Now here's why that matters. Lemon trees need more than just nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They need trace elements like zinc, iron, and manganese to produce healthy fruit and fight off disease. A general purpose fertilizer will not give your tree what it needs. A citrus-specific blend with trace elements included covers everything in one application. I apply it in early spring when the tree starts to wake up, again in early summer when fruit is setting, and once more in early autumn to carry it through the cooler months. For a mature tree, 5 to 6 handfuls scattered evenly on top of your mulch from about a foot out from the trunk all the way to the drip line. Water it in well, and that fertilizer drip feeds through the mulch over weeks, giving the tree a slow, steady supply instead of one big hit that causes a flush of leafy growth and no fruit. If you prefer manure, that works too, but straight manure does not have those trace elements. You will need to buy a separate trace element supplement, a small pack from the nursery, and apply it once a year on top of the manure. Either way, do not overdo it. My grandfather used to say, a lemon tree fed too heavy grows leaves for you and fruit for nobody. Give it just enough and let the tree do the rest. Feeding handled. Now, watering. And the timing of your water matters more than the amount. Water heavy when the fruit is setting. That is the critical window. Here's the thing about that. A lemon tree makes a decision every time it sets fruit. It looks at the conditions around it, the moisture in the soil, the heat, the available energy, and it decides how much fruit it can support. If the soil is dry during that window right after the flowers drop, and the tiny fruit begins to form, the tree reads that as a bad sign. It thinks conditions are not good enough to carry a full crop, so it drops fruit. You have probably seen it. Little green lemons all over the ground under the tree. That is not disease. That is not pests. That is the tree cutting its losses because it does not have enough water to feed all that fruit. My grandfather was religious about this. The moment he saw flowers starting to fall and little green nubs forming, he watered that tree deep every 3 to 4 days without fail. He used to say, when the flowers drop, the hose comes out. Keep that soil consistently moist, not waterlogged, but never dry during fruit set, and you will hold more fruit on that tree than you ever thought possible. Once the fruit is well established, about the size of a golf ball, you can back off a little. The tree is committed at that point, but during that setting window, do not let it go thirsty. If you are getting something out of this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I put out new videos every week with honest, no-nonsense gardening advice. It is free, and it means you will not miss the next one. All right, let us get back to it. Now, pests and disease. And I'm going to tell you something that might go against everything you have heard. Leave the tree alone unless you have a major infestation. That is my honest advice. Now, here's why that matters. If you did the first 4 steps right, your tree is strong. A strong, well-fed, well-watered tree in full sun can handle a few aphids, a handful of caterpillars, even some scale on a branch or two. It fights back on its own, and more importantly, it attracts predator insects that do the work for you. Ladybugs eat aphids. Parasitic wasps go after scale. There is a whole army of beneficial insects. Are gone. The pests come back faster are gone. The pests come back faster because nothing is left to keep them in check. I've seen people spray their lemon trees every 2 weeks and wonder why they always have pest problems. They created the problem themselves. If you see a small outbreak, leave it. If you see a major infestation, a whole branch covered in scale, or a citrus borer tunneling into the wood, handle it by hand. Prune out the affected branch, pick off the pests, or use a targeted organic solution like horticultural oil on just the affected area. Do not carpet bomb the whole tree, and never, ever use systemic pesticides on a tree that produces food you're going to eat. Plain and simple. That brings us to something most lemon tree growers never think about, and it makes a bigger difference than you would expect. Prune for airflow and light. Open up the center of the tree. Here's the thing about that. A lemon tree that grows into a thick, dense ball of foliage looks impressive, but the fruit on the inside gets no light and no air movement. That leads to smaller fruit, more pest-hiding spots, and fungal problems in humid climates. Once a year, in the late winter before the spring growth flush, take out any branches that cross through the center of the tree, anything that is dead or damaged, and any growth that is pointing straight down or straight up with no purpose. You're not trying to hack the tree back hard. You're opening it up so sunlight reaches the interior and air can move through. My grandfather used to say, if a bird can fly through it, you have pruned it right. That always stuck with me. A well-pruned lemon tree produces bigger, healthier fruit on every branch, because every branch is getting its share of light. Once your tree is pruned and open, the last thing to think about is protecting it when the cold comes, 32 degrees. That is where lemon trees start taking damage. Now here's why that matters. Lemons are subtropical trees. They love warmth, and they do not handle hard freezes. If you're in zone 9 or above, you are generally fine. But if you're in zone 8 or the cooler parts of zone 9, a single night below freezing can damage new growth, kill flowers, and set your fruit production back an entire season. If frost is in the forecast, drape the tree with a frost cloth the evening before. Not a plastic tarp. Plastic traps cold air against the leaves and makes things worse. A breathable frost cloth, $10 to $15 at any garden center, draped over the canopy and staked to the ground, holds just enough warmth around the tree to get it through a cold night. For young trees in their first 2 or 3 years, wrap the trunk with burlap or tree wrap from the ground up to the first branch. That protects the graft union, which is the most vulnerable, the point on a young citrus tree. A little preparation the night before a freeze beats replacing a dead tree in the spring. Now let me walk you through the problems you're most likely to run into and how to deal with them. Tree flowers heavily but drops all its fruit. That is the #1 complaint I hear from lemon growers. 9 times out of 10, that is a watering problem during fruit set. The tree decided conditions were not right and aborted the crop. Increase your watering frequency right when the flowers begin to drop and small fruit appears. Deep watering every 3 to 4 days through that window will make a dramatic difference by the next season. Yellow leaves on an otherwise healthy-looking tree. That is almost always a nutrient issue. If the leaves are yellow with green veins, that is iron deficiency. A dose of chelated iron or a citrus fertilizer with trace elements will correct it within a few weeks. And if the whole leaf is uniformly pale yellow, suspect nitrogen. Deficiency and top dress with compost or apply a balanced citrus feed. Fruit staying small and dry instead of plump and juicy. That is the tree telling you it does not have enough resources. Either it is not getting enough water during fruit development, not getting enough sun, or it is carrying more fruit than it can support. Thin the fruit if there is an excessive amount, water more consistently, and make sure nothing new is shading the tree. Heavy pest infestation concentrated on new growth. Aphids and scale love the soft, tender new leaves at the tips of branches. A strong blast of water from the hose will knock aphids off. For scale, Dab individual clusters with horticultural oil. Do not spray the whole tree. Target only the affected growth and let the beneficial insects handle the rest. No flowers at all after several years in the ground. That is the most frustrating one. If the tree is healthy and growing, but never flowers, it is almost certainly not getting enough sun, or it is being overfed with nitrogen. Too much nitrogen pushes leaf growth at the expense of flowers and fruit. Cut back on fertilizer, make sure the tree is getting at least 6 hours of direct sun, and give it a season to adjust. Patience here is everything. Now, if you take nothing else from this video, remember this. My grandfather taught me this, and I have followed it my entire life. When the flowers drop, water. Do not wait for the soil to dry out. Do not wait for the leaves to wilt. The moment those little white flowers start falling and you see tiny green fruit forming in their place, that is your signal. Water deeply every 3 to 4 days from that point forward until the fruit is well established. My grandfather used to say, a lemon tree decides in the first 2 weeks whether it is going to keep its fruit or let it go. And the only vote you get is water. He watched his neighbors lose crop after crop because they watered on the same schedule all year and never changed a thing when it mattered most. He watered heavy at fruit set and light the rest of the year, and his trees were always loaded. I do the same thing to this day, and I've never had a tree drop a full crop on me. That one simple adjustment, paying attention to when the tree needs you most, is the difference between a handful of lemons and more than you know what to do with. And that is the honest truth about getting a lemon tree to bear fruit year after year. No fancy tricks, no gimmicks, just what actually works in the garden. If this helped you out, go ahead and subscribe. I put out new videos every week to help you grow better food. Take care, and I will catch you in the next one.